Welcome to Survivor Rites, everyone. We are here today with my friend Brice Erickson, who is in person. I was hoping to be in person, but logistics just didn't work out. But our big interview today is with Mary Ann Schoeff. She is the author of The Truth About the Truth, and she has been writing that book for 50 years. So we are going to ask her a lot of questions today. I'm going to start out with, what on earth got you going on this project, and then why did you stick with it through all the things? I know that you have had a horrible car accident, you've had all kinds of things happen in that 50-year window, and you just kept coming back to it. So here's what I'm going to say about that. Whether people agree or disagree with anything that you have to say about the book, no one can argue with your commitment to getting it done. So I want to start there. So I'm going to let you answer. What on earth?
Well, I think it goes back to my childhood. I've always been interested in cults. I remember witnessing to a little Mormon girl when I was in grade school.
Interesting.
So, I've just always been interested, and I just couldn't stop. I was always been interested in history and political science, which was my degree, and just ministry of any kind, because my dad was a Methodist minister, a very strong Christian. I was a PK, preacher's kid, so I had a lot of experiences, and so I've always been interested. And then my husband's sister married a 2x2, and that got me thinking, what is this thing she's in? She could never tell us anything about it. And basically, she condemned us all to hell. And I thought, my goodness, I need to find out about this. And so, for her sake, and that's what got me started. And it took a long time. I had to write letters. I couldn't find anything in any history books. I looked in all church history, couldn't find anything. So I contacted newspapers around the world, particularly the British Isles, and that's where I got my first clue. It took a couple years to get that, and so that's how it got me started. I started just a little tidbit of information, and
it's so amazing.
It just led to my continuing to try to get as much information as possible. And I was showing Brice I brought 4 boxes from my over 36 bankers boxes of material, and he was oohing and aahing over that. Oh my goodness.
That's why the second you told me what all you had and how long you've been interviewing and gathering information for this, I'm like, Brice, you're the guy for this job. I knew you that wrong.
He opened the first box, and I think he was totally flabbergasted.
She's got it all organized in files by vintage. The organization's amazing.
So,
that is incredible.
And so I had to take, over the years, all of this material that I collected. I've been to all kinds of meetings, conventions. I've interviewed people. I helped people get out of the group. I was even an expert witness in a Canadian child custody case. They flew me up to Canada, and I was a witness on the stand. And then I helped in a case in California, a similar thing. And then, oh my goodness, so many experiences. Oh, and one of the most interesting ones, these parents came to me, and they were all distraught because their teenage daughter was starting to get involved with the 2x2 group. And they wanted help. They wanted answers. They didn't know what was going on. And I made arrangements for their daughter to spend a month with Darla Holt, Sidney Holt's sister-in-law, up in Sacramento. And she helped deprogram this teenage girl. So, yeah, I was doing all kinds of things like this. I was helping a lot of people get out of the group. I got the local newspaper to do an article on convention at Post Falls, and that got the Secret Sect book presented in the local bookstore, and Christy Dolvin, who's also on the back of my book and a contributor and a researcher and helped me with my book, she and her sister went and bought the book there as a result of that newspaper article. So I've helped a lot of people get out. So it's been a really interesting experience. And I've gone to all kinds of meetings. My husband used to say the only people who can stand to go to a 2x2 meeting are the 2x2s and his wife. And so we would, and even on our vacation trips, we would take the convention list, and any state we were driving through, we'd try to find the convention. And so we finally found the Shoals Convention in Indiana, which was sort of hidden off a side road. And we went to Wasilla when we went to Alaska, and the lady there gave us a complete tour of the facilities, which I thought was interesting. And we took pictures and all of this. And then we got a phone call from her later where she said, "Don't use any of those. The workers," they were upset when they found out what she had done.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so we've had a lot of experiences. My husband has had some experiences. My son, I took him to Post Falls 2 summers ago.
Mm.
And I said, "You'll probably, he's Christian, good son. He's been helping me with my book." And I said, "You'll probably find it boring from your background." And I said, "But I want you to count the number of people. That'll give you something to do." Because I figured the monastery was closed down, so a lot of those people would be coming to Post Falls, which I didn't find that there were that many more there than usual. But anyway, but he said, "This is the most mind-sucking, soul-sucking, mind-numbing experience of my life." And he said the only way these people get salvation is through total incoherence. And
Oh my.
so I thought that was very interesting. That was his outsider. He'd never been to any meetings. All he'd done was help me with my book, and it was mainly transcribing from word perfect to word. So it wasn't like he was doing in-depth reading or anything.
Right.
But, he had quite an experience. And now, and as soon as the book, I have to tell Brice, as soon as the book was finished and we got it to the publisher and everything, he said, "Oh, good, I don't have to do anything more." Well, now he's checking my website 3 times a day to see how many books have been sold. He's so into it now. It's funny. But we've had some interesting experiences. And the only thing he learned at convention, he said, was how the Japanese language was constructed, because the main speaker was an Australian worker who had been sent to Japan, which we wondered maybe he had a pedophilia issue in Australia, and that's why he was sent to Japan. But, who knows?
We never know.
And then there was the sister worker that spoke about trees that anchor us. So, he didn't feel like there was anything to be gained by their speaking. And neither did I, for that matter. But it was a very interesting experience. And I was telling Brice, it's funny. Over the years, I've done some really crazy things. I've been to preps. I was invited to lunch at preps. It was celebrating one of the workers' birthdays. And he had a Walla Walla Preps T-shirt on that one of the friends had given him. And I was sitting there and enjoying preps with them. And I thought, this is really interesting. Here I am. I'm this person that's really evaluating this group very closely. And yet they've accepted me here and there. I'd go to convention. They'd hand me the worker list and the pictures, and they would do all kinds of really nice things to me. I went to Judy Dudley and I said, "What's the recipe for convention stew?" She gave me the recipe. It's in my book. And so, people were just so nice. And I went to Four Lakes gospel meeting just for the fun of it, because I do all of this for fun. And the second time I went, Cyril Sylvester was there. And the first thing he asked me was, "How's your book coming?" So I thought that was very interesting. And yet they were very tolerant of me. They put up with me. I would hang out at Milltown. I'd hang out at Post Falls. I tackled Bob Ingram on the walkway to the house at Post Falls and quizzed him. And, no one ever gave me a bad time. And I thought, maybe they're just hoping that one day I'll profess. That's the only...
That's highly likely, Mary Ann. Highly likely.
I know, I know. I went to a full gospel mission, 10 meetings, and I was telling Brice, I taped the whole thing. I sat in the front, had my tape recorder and taped the whole thing.
Wow.
And B. Mukini and Charlene Beck, and they were just so hoping I'd profess. And they tried to get me twice, and it didn't work. But my professing relatives came over all the way from Idaho to every meeting while I was there. They were hoping to, but it didn't happen. But interesting experiences.
They probably thought that was going to change your mind about writing this book, this 500-page book, I might add. That is a lot of pages and a lot of information and a lot of research over a long period of time.
Well, you know, I've been noticing a lot of people that I've seen quoted, you know, they feel like their spirituality has gone down the tubes. They're not interested in religion anymore, and they don't want to have anything to do with this. And that's, I have mentioned that statistically in my book because I did a lot of questionnaires and so on, so I had some good statistics. But I feel very sad for them because, you know, Jesus is waiting for them. He died for their sins and their ignorance, and he wants them to come to him. And I'm so hoping that people that read the book, they'll see the spiritual grains throughout the book, and they'll understand what they were in was not something that's a permanent destruction of their personality and their life and their spirituality and their emotions. I mean, they'd been through a lot. And yet God says, I can wash that away. I can wash all that away instantly. And so, you know, I just want the book to be a help to people. I wrote it because I didn't have a choice. I feel that God was just guiding I look at the book now and I said, did I write this? You know, I look at it, I can't hardly believe it. And I think it was a God thing, you know. And Christy Dolvin and Kathy Munn Lewis, they talk, they're on the back of the book and they're referenced throughout. They're close friends of mine. I talk to them practically every day. And, you know, they really feel this was a God thing. And even the picture on the cover, it's the last puzzle piece going into place. I'm trying to help people really see what it was so that they could get past it and find help. That's my whole goal.
Well, you just answered all the questions on my list pretty much.
Okay. Well, whatever you've skipped, Oz.
Oh, well, okay. That was a lot of it. Is I really, you know, the tenacity with which you have continued the work and how many years you gathered the work. And obviously now I was super excited to see how organized it was. And thank you, Brice, for being there to attest for that, because I could tell from just interacting with you, getting ready for today, that you have a mission and you are on it. And it's very impressive. So I want to ask how young you are. I already know the answer to this, but I want the whole world to know that this has been a lifetime of work for you.
I'm 79. I just turned 79. And I would say my sister-in-law married into the group in 1972. And I really started beginning to get a little trickling of information in 1974. And so it's gone forward from then.
Well, and the other thing that impresses me is, you know, most of your work was done when we didn't have the internet. So that is just, you know, to a lot of people, for the 500 pages that you have and the information that you have, the gathering, I mean, that has been boots on the ground. You literally doing whatever you needed to do to get that information. And I find that so impressive, and that level of commitment, you know, that's what I was saying in the beginning, is whether they like it or don't like it, nobody can argue with your level of commitment. So,
well, I have to say Kathy Lewis and Christy have been by my side for years and years and years. I helped Christy get out. She and her sister get out, and her mother as well. And then Kathy and I became friends in the 80s. And so, you know, they've helped me so much, and they've contacted people. I've had things sent to me. I've even had a sister worker, Selma Grace Lundeen, who's Christy's cousin. wrote me a letter concerned about all the sexual issues. She wrote me trying to get information because she was complaining to the overseer about it and not wanting Bob Ingram to come and be head overseer in Washington. And so, I've even had workers contact me.
About what year was that?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, it was when this whole Bob Ingram Truett Euler thing happened in Alaska. I can't remember exact date, but
okay.
that was a big thing, and she felt comfortable enough to even write me as a worker. So I thought that was interesting. But people would send me things. They'd send me their, boxes of pictures. All the things that would have normally been thrown out and destroyed, people would send to me. So I had worker lists. I had meeting notes. I had pictures. I had letters. I made a questionnaire, and I would send it out to all the X2A2s, and they would fill out the questionnaires, and I did statistical studies, and those are mentioned in the book. And it's just been an interesting experience. And then Kathy and I worked together on the Forward Press, which was for like 3 or 4 years. It was a little quarterly newsletter where the friends could send in their letters and comments, and we'd include pictures sometimes and information. And it was a way to help the people who had left so they'd have information and they could share. And so we were doing all kinds of things. And I guess someone was mentioning on the website at my publishers about how at a special meeting out in the valley in the 1990s, he found all kinds of little literature on their windshields that I had put there. While they were at special meeting, I had put some information on their windshield. And then my son and I, we had the most, 2 years ago, we had the list for the local area. And so we found the name and address of a family here in Spokane. So we went and stuck a piece of literature under their doormat so they would get it. So we were doing all kinds of crazy things like that.
I love it. When I first
trying to help in any way we could.
Yes. Well, I was with Cynthia Lyles, last week. We had a great conversation about you, and we were just talking about how those of us, there's so many of us that are women, and we are disruptors. I mean, it's just who we are. It's who we were born to be, and we can't stop. It's like, to our own detriment sometimes, we're just going to keep on going because the disruption that is our purpose and what we are meant to do is so deeply ingrained in us, and we care so much that, if only people knew we were doing it from such a place of love. I mean,
well, my whole family has been involved in this. I know when my kids were little, and my sister-in-law's little kids were little, they would all hang out in the boys' and girls' bedrooms playing games and things. And my kids witnessed to them when they were little kids.
Wow.
And so I know that my sister-in-law had 3 children. The 2 oldest left the group when they were in their college-age years. And the youngest one took a shotgun and killed himself in the park. So, that's a family thing. We're aware of this. And then the one daughter was getting married, and Sue and Steve, and Sue Murray and Steve Murray are my professing relatives. And their daughter, Camille, came up here to Spokane, and they visited with my daughter here in this house. I wasn't invited. I didn't want to come anyway. I know that they probably wouldn't like that anyway. But they maintained some contact with my family members. And but they wouldn't talk to any of my husband and I. No, not since they shipped Mom's body back up to be buried here after she'd gone down to visit. They wouldn't have no phone calls, anything. And anytime we had a legal action, we had to sell a property that was in Mom's name. And it was Sue and my husband were the technical beneficiaries. So we had to get together and sell this property. Well, they had their lawyer, who used to be our lawyer, but they had won him over to their side. And then we had our lawyer, and only the lawyers could talk to each other. They wouldn't talk to us. They haven't said a word to us since 1998.
Hmm.
And so we had,
Well,
and
there's
it
a
took
price. There's a
8
price.
months to sell this house because it was just going back and forth between the attorneys. It was very tragic. So I did a whole chapter. It wasn't a big chapter, but I did a chapter in my book about connections, illegal connections and involvements. Make sure you have everything very carefully written out so that there's no way they can mess it up and create problems later. And they will do that, because you're going to hell. You're not a good person. You're not a decent person. They want nothing to do with you. So therefore you're left out. And it's important.
It is important. So this book has definitely been, you and I've had this conversation, a little bit of a bomb of information, and you did that intentionally. And if you could just summarize for us what your ultimate goal was when you sent this off to the publisher and you went to sleep that night, in your mind, I want to know, what were you thinking?
I was thinking I want to get my sister-in-law out of this group. That's my whole goal, is to help her to see the truth. And that's always been the goal from day one. It's always been to help her. And I suddenly realized after I was doing all this research that I could help other people as well. But my main goal has always been I want to get her out. And so I've ordered a bunch of books. I finally got my niece's, her daughter's address, which I thought was an amazing miracle. She sent that to me, and I said, I'm going to send you a bunch of books. You can send one to your brother in Virginia who's out, and you can send one to your mom. And so we'll see what happens. But I know Susie's good friends with, there's a Tenniswood elder or Tenniswood worker that's a friend of hers. So, who knows? I included that picture, by the way, on the video scan, the two workers there. One of them's a Tenniswood. So
Yeah, interesting. Well, Brice, there's a lot of information in the book, and I know you have a lot of questions, so I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. She pretty much answered every question I had, so the floor is yours, and I can hardly wait.
what do you want to know?
So 1974 was the beginning of really your research, and your sister-in-law joined in like 72.
Yes.
But it took you a couple of years to kind of figure out where things were going.
Yeah.
Was that when you started to get a response back from the British Isles?
Yeah,
I got kind of the beginning of.
Yeah, I got a letter back from Northern Ireland, actually, and they identified the group because there were a lot of things written about the group back there, and then I started getting interesting little booklets. There was one called The Cunning Cult by a couple that had gotten involved with the group. I got one called Secret Mormonism and Christian Science, which actually is about the 2x2s, and that was sent to me by a gal. And so I just started collecting information. It just started arriving, and it was like a godsend, really.
So kind of 74 was the beginning of that, and
right.
And then there was kind of a period probably where you were gaining information.
Oh, yes.
That this was started by William Irvine and some of the beginning of that.
And my husband and I went to the British Isles in 1981, and we just had the opportunity. He was there for a business conference, and we spent an extra couple weeks there touring around England, Scotland, and Ireland and interviewing people. We interviewed William Irvine's nieces in Kilsyth.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they were telling us all about him. And then we went to talk to John Everstein, who was the head of the Faith Mission, which is the group that Irvine originally started out with. And so he was going through the history books and giving us information. And we went over to Ireland, and visited a number of people that we knew. We had an interesting stay. We went to Sligo, which is over on the western coast of Ireland, and the place was packed. We were staying in a bed and breakfast, and the gal was packed. She didn't have any room, but she felt so sorry for us. She set us up in her living room, so we got to sleep in her living room. And she told us that the local 2x2s, a lot of them were poor, and so they would become involved in the group just because they knew that the 2x2s would help them financially or with their crops or animals or whatever. And so, we were learning things all the time on our trip to the British Isles. And we had some interesting experiences while there, too. I'll just mention, we were in London for the royal wedding with Charles and Diana. And then we went to Scotland, and the worldwide famous royal tattoo was there. So we went to the tattoo, which was very famous at Edinburgh Castle. And so we had lots of wonderful memories of the trip and lots of opportunity to pick up information here and there.
Now, you said something in your book about William's nieces talking about William.
Yeah.
And how was he viewed in the family? How did they view William?
Well, they loved him dearly, but they said he was sort of bee-headed. That's the term they used.
Is that kind of like buzzing around in the head or something?
Yeah, he was not, and none of them were ever involved in his new religion. And, he would send them money from Israel when he went there. And they loved him, but he was just strange, had problems. So they wouldn't have anything, they couldn't really say anything too positive about him in that regard. So.
Did they mention anything about William's son?
They mentioned his son Archie, and he had evidently gotten involved with a woman before he got involved with Faith Mission and his 2x2 ministry. And they had a son, and the son went to New Zealand and became a Presbyterian minister, I think.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's what I read. So in your time of observing the church, because you started in 1974, Secret Sect didn't come out till 82. Mm-hmm. There really was, it was kind of a dark hole of information to go digging in. Mm-hmm. That's 52 years. When you look at the church now, what kind of changes have you seen? Have they really changed a lot?
Well, it's just, instead of having just one or two key people like George Walker and Jack Carroll, it's sort of splintered a little bit, so you have more overseers. And I had a recent study that was provided to me where someone had done a statistical study on all the workers over the years, and they discovered that the number of workers has declined from the 1980s all the way back to the level in 1926. So they've lost a lot in the workers. And so, a lot of interesting facts have come out.
So when you think about your book and you think about Cherie's book, mm-hmm. What do you see as differences between those two books? Because you're both talking about some of the same things, but you're approaching it from a different viewpoint and a different perspective, I think.
Well, I think, I had my own experiences in the British Isles and understanding the history. So my whole Damnation Army chapter, I think, has a lot of differences from her book where she talks about the early history. And I know that's one of her big things is the history of the group. And so, it's just a different perspective. And I thought it was interesting to find out little quirky things like William Irvine happened to be in San Francisco during the 1906 earthquake. What are the odds?
Yeah.
So, and then I became good friends with Patty Roberts, who wrote the book on Eddie Cooney, and we visited her when she was in California, and she fixed a nice breakfast for us and everything. And then we visited her sisters in Ireland when we were there, and so we got to meet a lot of people and learn a lot of things, and we even were selling the Secret Sect book and The Life of Eddie Cooney by Patricia Roberts, and then Kathy Lewis's book. And so we were trying to get information out to people as much as we could.
So what do you know? I'm now just curious. We're thinking of secret sect. So you knew Doug Parker then?
I didn't. I never met him.
Okay.
But we knew about the book, and so I made sure I got copies of the book, and I took them to the two Christian bookstores.
Okay.
So they would have them to sell, and then I got that newspaper article which advertised the book, and got people interested in it. So.
And I noticed in your book you use a lot of quotes from workers in their own words.
Oh, yeah.
You've obviously read through an amazing amount of their what's been written down, because that's really all you have, because they don't really do a doctrine statement.
Yeah. Well, and then I went to a lot of meetings too, so I took good notes, and people would send me their documents. Sometimes when people left, they would send it all to me rather than burning it, you know. Mm-hmm. So I had just a treasure trove of wonderful material, and I mean, I had a whole box just of worker lists, you know. So,
wow.
You might want to be checking those out in the near future. Here, I think Pam might have some interest in some of that. Yes. And now that they're starting to track workers around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting.
But you were talking about how they've changed. Well, like they've splintered from having just one or two people controlling everything here in the States to, you know, a lot of more overseers taking power and you know, not being under the wing of George Walker and Jack Carroll anymore. And so that's a big change. And then with all the people leaving in this whole FBI investigation and pedophilia, and all through my whole book, I have little tidbits of information about this kind of thing, and then I have a whole chapter on that too. I had a tract that I had created called Abuse and the Truth, and I expanded upon that for chapter 9 in my book, Troubling Solutions. I tried to use their terminology, their thought process, their quotes, to sort of let them speak for themselves, and to help people realize it. And then X2 by 2s, they'd say, oh yeah, I've heard that. I know what that term means. I understand that. And so I wanted to get into their heads so they could see that I knew what I was talking about.
Do you remember the first time that you ran across sexual abuse in the church? Was that fairly early on? Or when did you run across
that was one of the early ones. I can mention it publicly. I heard about this worker was practicing bestiality. Just because he wanted to stay in the work, he didn't want to have any involvement with any women or children, so he would practice bestiality. And I thought, that's interesting. That was one of the earliest things I heard. And then, of course, William Irvine, we went to Canada, and we visited an ex-worker, and he confirmed that William Irvine had been quite active sexually. And you could see why some people in the early days were very upset with their daughters getting involved in this group, because they were concerned what could happen, and it probably happened, you know. So.
Yeah, history's kind of shown a different light on some of that. So you think over the years, now do you think the splintering a little bit has altered the doctrine at all?
I don't know that it's altered it a lot, but I think that they preach the same sermons. I have a whole thing in my one of the chapters where I list the percentages for certain sermon topics, but they tend to preach the same sermons, and they're handed down generationally from one worker to another, and you know, to the point where they even know, oh, I remember when so and so used to preach that sermon way back when, and so they hear it again. And so I think a lot of things have stayed the same in that regard, doctrinally and whatever. But I think that you know, they're having to deal with a lot of issues, and I know even people like Willie Jameson, I have it in my book, where he was at his 90th birthday party in California, and he said, I wondered why I did all of this. Was it worth it? Was it really a good thing? And so even some of the older workers were beginning to wonder. So.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, because Willie, they started that, it seems like right around after 1914, after William's excommunication, that we started to see the shores of Galilee narratives start to show up. In 1916, I have somebody sent me a copy of Jack Carroll writing in the Bible that Paul wrote 14 epistles, 11 to the saints and 3 to the workers, using that word, insinuating that this was from, and, Jack Carroll knew good and well it wasn't, because 1897, he's sitting there in William's meetings.
Right.
But he kind of, he started saying things like, you can tell a false church if it was started by a man or a woman. We were started by Christ. And you mentioned that in your book. You have Willie telling his version of that, which I think he goes after the Methodists and the Christian Scientists and the Mormons. And then you also have him telling people that, that wasn't necessarily the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, they sort of depend who they talk to. Sometimes they would admit to something and then they would retract it, or they would preach something different in the next few days. Yeah. So, it was just sort of a hodgepodge thing sometimes. But I think the older workers knew a lot more, but they couldn't preach it, and they wouldn't pass that on to the younger workers. And the younger workers would be stuck with whatever, they had been taught. And sometimes they would see through it and say, I just can't preach this anymore. This is not what I'm reading. And if they actually read the Bible, which a lot of them don't do it very seriously, if they actually read the Bible and got into the Pauline teachings and so on, they'd really start to comprehend what Jesus was all about. And this was not something that was easily done. I mean, they just, they were lucky to give a testimony of any kind. And like I said, how the Japanese language was constructed.
So you at one point started sending out questionnaires, because you refer to these in your book, where you've sent these questionnaires out and people were responding back.
Yes.
Why did you start doing that?
Oh, goodness. That was probably before 2000.
Okay.
I was sending out questionnaires. I have over 100 questionnaires that were sent out to X2Y2s all over the world. And they would answer sometimes anonymously, sometimes they would just, give me that info. And so I learned a lot from those questionnaires. I even asked, I had statistics in my book from the questionnaires about those that experienced, there were over 60% that experienced sexual or marital abuse,
So you were asking those questions back in the 90s?
Oh, yes. And I tried to cover everything, what they were taught, what they believed, their personal experience, everything.
Now, Threshing Floor Ministries, what's that about?
Well, I sort of ended up with that. There was a local Bible teacher here in town, just a college guy, and we became friends, and he was interested in the 2x2s, and so Threshing Floor Ministries I adopted from him, and I made it available online so that anyone could contact me with information or wanted information, and as a ministry, it's still there, so anyone can contact me on email through Threshing Floor Ministries. But I thought it was very appropriate because if you're in a farmer or a wheat farmer or corn farmer or anything, and you know what a threshing floor is, if you take the grain into the barn and you whack it, and you get the grains off the roots, and so that's how you thrash. And so I'm thrashing the 2x2 basically. I'm shaking the grain off so that people can really get the real fruit from it. So
Interesting. Yeah, because I know threshing floor was kind of the terror of the beginning of the internet, because it was one of the first places that people, once the internet started to take off, could get information.
Oh yeah.
On the 2x2s.
Oh yeah.
And I know that had a profound effect on some people.
Well, I know. Oh, for instance, when we were in Ireland, we went to Enniskillen in Northern Ireland, and we toured Croagh-na-Carib, which was one of the original convention sites. And we went to the local newspaper office, the Impartial Reporter and Farmers Journal, and they had just gotten a new copy machine, and they hadn't really used it. And they had all these, I mean, they were big books. They had books as big as that television screen over there, full of old newspapers. And so my husband and I were juggling all these big books, taking photographs of all the early 2x2 information, you know, all the meetings and everything. And they let us use their copy machine for free.
Oh, boy.
So we got...
You got to break it in for them.
We broke into their copy machine like big time. And so I had over about an inch thick of old Impartial Reporter newspaper articles that dated from the very beginnings of the group, you know, until about 1913 or so.
Boy, they were paying close attention back in those days.
Man, yeah, I mean, it didn't take much. I have a story in where this girl was on a bicycle and she got hit on the way to the convention. I mean, you know, even something as trivial as that made the paper. And so, you know, I had a lot of data there, and that's one thing I think that got Cherie going. She was fascinated by these old articles, and so she ended up doing her own trip and research on that.
A lot of those articles, by the way, are up on Cherie's site, telling the truth. They're buried under newspapers, I think, early, under the history part.
I couldn't, you know, there's no way I could put everything in my book. You know, no way. So I tried to get the most important things in there. So.
Yeah, the person that must have been writing those articles seemed to be pretty literate from a Christian standpoint.
Oh, yes.
Very insightful what he was seeing and recording.
Oh, yes, and there were some early books, you know, early little booklets that they wrote, and I've had access to some of those. And like I said, the one of the craziest ones was Secret Mormonism and Christian Science, and that was written by Amelia Atmore, and she was just, you know, she was very concerned because some people got involved with the 2x2s, and she was wondering, are they Mormons? Are they Christian Scientists? What are they? You know. So she wrote this book. Crazy title, but it's really about the 2x2s.
So when you started attending like in 1985, you said you attended a full mission here in Spokane, and they didn't have any idea that they were thinking you were hot interest because you were up in the front row.
Oh man, yeah, and they didn't know I had a hidden tape recorder. I have all the tapes. I taped that. I taped the whole interview with B. Mukini and Charlene Beck when they came to my home. No one knew I was taping. So. And then I summarized, in the book, each meeting and what it was really implying and, you know, my experience there. Of course, I didn't profess, so everyone just got up and left.
So do you think, now you talk about that, especially the kind of a format that seems to be used. I had never I've been, born and raised. I've sat through a bazillion gospel meetings. I never picked up on that, but you pick up on there seems to be kind of, especially if maybe it's an outsider, there seems to be a format that they're following to kind of ease into the doctrine. We don't just come out and say the quiet part out loud right up front.
Yeah, they would never say, we're the only right ones, so, you know, they would sort of ease into that. So they'd try to make you feel like they were Christian. They would make you feel like, oh, this isn't too bad. This is sort of what I believe, because they're trying to get outsiders in. But in reality, their whole, who's that? Is that my grandson? Yeah. Okay, this is one of my grandsons. Logan. Hey, hi, Logan.
That's not that. Oh, that's what. That's what you say on the
Yeah, I have two 14-year-old grandsons. The oldest one has, by a minute, has always wanted to be a policeman. I mean, ever since he was 3. He's planning on it. And then Logan there is decided he wants to be a personal injury attorney so he can make a lot of money. So I think they're sort of fun. And Logan is very, very spiritual too. So I'm very proud of that.
So in these gospel meetings, you also kind of noticed, or at some point you picked up on the fact that they were using tunes in the hymn books that would be familiar to people from other churches, perhaps, because they're using tunes from that were not so much the insider written tunes, but tunes that were written to kind of to give a familiarity.
Right. And then they even in the hymn books, it was interesting. We visited R.L. Allen in Glasgow, and they had no idea that this group was iffy, and they were publishing their Bibles and their hymn books and everything. And we bought one of their hymn books, the 2x2 hymn books there. So anyway, but
right to the source.
Oh yeah.
I think that's your style, Brice.
Well, what else would I do? I mean, that's my modus operandi there. So anyway, yeah, it was. They would use certain hymns for certain occasions and so on, and then they would skip to others, and they would change the lyrics on some of them, and so that eventually, God's grace would become the workers. So. That
kind of code worded it.
Yes.
Yeah, because some of those early hymns were, about a third of the current hymn book is from outside, what they would call outside. But the words have oftentimes been modified. The tunes are recycled, and then about 2/3 of the current one are from workers or friends.
And they would still use. There were some Eddie Cooney hymns in there that they don't ID, and It's just interesting how they fudge all of that. So.
Yeah, because it almost becomes part of the doctrine, a faith that questions not kind of a thing, is repeated, and it actually will be part of testimonies and whatnot.
The one thing, I'll just mention this too, the one thing that really fascinates me too is their separation of Jesus and the Christ. And, it's sort of like they're carrying on the Christ spirit, and if they die out, then the Christ spirit dies out, and there's no hope for anyone. I mean, they have this really twisted view. They don't comprehend that Jesus was fully the Christ, and that the Christ is a separate thing that they can sort of attach to. And I look on the workers as sort of like avatars, if you're familiar with that term. They're avatars today of Jesus, and they separate Jesus from the Christ spirit, and it's just mind-boggling that they would do that. It's just they can't comprehend it.
That really started kind of around the Living Witness time, but also probably back to William's mission to be the sharp teeth of the thrasher against the mountains of clericalism.
Right. That period in England, it was going through a lot of turbulent times there in the mid 1800s on, with trying to find Christianity, because the Church of England is very rigid, and I don't know, actually, I find it hard to think of anyone actually finding Jesus very easily through the Church of England. And so there were all these other groups, the Salvation Army and Sankey and Moody and all of this coming to try to Catholic conventions, trying to get people spiritualized there. And so, it was just interesting time. And so Irvine was buying into that, I think.
And then there was a little bit, it seems like early on there was some experimentation with like faith healing and and some of that type of stuff.
Yes, they one of the workers that came over with Irvine, they visited Dr. Dowie's in Madison Square Garden. He had a sort of a healing ministry program there, and he had a group in Illinois that where his headquarters was, and the worker even went and spent time there. They were trying to find spiritual gifts, and then they decided can't find it, can't get it, so we'll just drop it. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't never realized that part of the history.
Yeah. Interesting, and they had some interesting experiences. I mentioned them in the book, where people would speak in tongues, or like this little boy was growling like a dog, and they were wondering about that, what was going on. So that sort of came from that. They're trying to get some spiritual revival going on in England, and things were happening, but they couldn't get a grip on it. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't be a party to it because of their beliefs.
It seems like some of that probably got perhaps exaggerated, because there was, I think, a D.W. Wilson that was running around at that time that I think it was his daughter had gone into the ministry, and he was accusing them of white slavery and of free love, and so there may have been some other stuff tossed in there to cast some shade on the ministry.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of that happened too, because Irvine was supposedly, one of the workers said that he was involved in getting all the sister workers involved. So
goodness knows.
Yeah, and that was basically it. When we visited an ex-worker in Canada, that he was commenting on that kind of thing too. So.
And you had a really interesting thing about Jack Carroll having a cache of gold.
Oh, yeah. That was in the 50s. It was like around 1952. And the government wasn't allowing people to own gold. And so he had a bunch of gold. And he needed to hide it. So he went to the Rittenhouse Sweetland people over at Hayden Lake and said, hide my gold for me. And they said, we're not going to touch it. And so he got rid of the Hayden Lake Convention as a result, and they left. 'Cause it was hard for them because they had relatives that were workers, but
Yeah, I've read some of that controversy, and there seems to be multiple points there. There were some doctrinal issues brought up that I hadn't heard about the gold business there, because the homeless, penniless ministry seems to have drifted a little bit from
and there are millions, literally millions of dollars tied up, at least at one point for sure. And then this builder, this contractor in California, Johnson, he was taking worker money and building apartment complexes and business buildings and everything, and he would take the workers around and show them, this is where I'm putting your money. And so
that seems to have caused a bit of scandal.
Oh, it did. And the younger worker was, the older worker was not very happy that the younger worker was party to this discussion. So, and then I guess Eldon Tenniswood had an issue with $60,000 gift that was given to him. So there's a lot of money floating around, and they hide it. I love the story. This lady was given Eldon Tenniswood's pants to mend, and she found that his pocket went clear down to the cuff. His pants leg all the way down. And so evidently he was ready to collect money. And then the other worker would have a hole in his shoe, and he'd wear that at convention and, put his foot up like that and let everyone see the little hole in his shoe. And they'd say, we've got to give money to help him so he could get a new pair of shoes. So there's all these these stories, and I try to put them in. Oh, and then I've been looking for this in my book, and I haven't been able to find it because I know it's in there. There was some street person that professed, and he said, "I'm so expletive deleted that I found the workers."
That's toward the end of your book, by the way.
Oh, is it? Oh, good.
I read it last night.
I'll look to that. But he did that in a couple meetings. So you can imagine what kind of stir that would cause.
I think that was in a part where you had a lady that was loudly saying "Amen."
Oh yeah.
And the workers got after her for it because they didn't feel that expression was appropriate.
Yeah. So I tried to put a lot of interesting, amusing anecdotes throughout the book because it is a bit of a heavy tone, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they really get into what they believe and all of that, and I try to make it as interesting and amusing in ways as possible because, I mean, otherwise you'd just be really overwhelmed by the absurdity of it all. So.
And some of those you seem to have been setting on for a long time.
Oh, man. Yeah.
The one about the lady that heard the minister talk about scraping the barnacles off the ship.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one, too.
And gave her testimony about scraping the barnacles off the ship, and somehow she got up and gave a testimony about getting her bottom scraped. I wonder how many people...
I haven't read the book.
Oh, I read all of it.
So I try to put those in there because, I mean, they're interesting. They relate, and yet it just... I had to do it because they're such interesting stories, you know.
Now, the issue of the cover photos come up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And is there plans to kind of change that at all? Or?
Oh, no. I mean, that was the nicest picture I could find. That, you know, I had a lot of black and white pictures. I had some smaller pictures. That was the clearest and the brightest and everything. I mean, it's, 35 years old at least? And for someone to be discouraged and traumatized by it, I mean, I'm puzzled because, I mean, now that woman's probably not wearing a bun, so no one would recognize her in all those years. And yet it struck me, if they're traumatized by looking at that picture and seeing themselves, that's a very sad thing, you know, that just looking at that picture would be so upsetting.
Yeah, I think there's been a growing realization that the ministry of the deception that a lot of them joined the ministry, and I think that there's, especially for those who leave, a sense of real betrayal because they were told it was from the beginning. You know, Jesus started this thing.
Yeah.
And
it goes back beyond that.
And they feel that a lot of them were basically indoctrinated from birth and tricked into to joining the ministry. And so there's, I think, a sensitivity today, especially in the last couple of years, as people are realizing the depth of the way that things have been worded. And so there's that in a way, many of the ministry are victims also of what has happened. They were, you know, when we look back at it, we see Jack Carroll and George Walker. William even may have been, you know, having religious delusions, but Jack and George, they knew good and well what they did.
Oh, yeah. Andrew Abernathy, too.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, Thorold and those who came in that group were very secretive, and I think they definitely influenced the ministry. You allude to that in your book, actually, of how that process kind of worked and how some of the ministers would wake up and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, but the cost of leaving was so high.
Oh, yes. And, I mean, even for people today, you know, all these women that have left, you know, I feel for them, but you know, they need to realize that Jesus can heal them right now, you know, and that, you know, they were in something very sad and very delusional and all of this, but Jesus can can heal them and help them. I mean, they may not be able to get the testimony out of them totally. I mean, it's, like when you look at the picture, you say, oh, yes, that's me 35 years ago, and I'm traumatized by this, But I think that Jesus can heal. He can. And that's why those two scripture verses at the very end, before the terminology, I think are very relevant. That Jesus says, I can heal, or the prophet says, I can heal you. God is going to bless you with overwhelming healing, and that the swarms of locusts have eaten all this, but God can take that away. And there have been people that have left over 50 years. They've been in it their whole lives, and even Darla's parents. They had meeting in their home for 30 years or something, and they left. And so people can leave, they can find something new and just be grateful, like Kathy Lewis. She's oh my goodness, she's so grateful. She's 81 now, and she's so grateful that they left. And we visited them in, the late 70s, I think it was. And they just were so grateful that they left. And they've grown so much in the Lord. It's just a beautiful thing. So.
And then you talk a little bit about why some returned and what the power is that draws them back once they've left.
Well, it could be something as simple as family, friends, or not being able to fully commit to any other kind of Christian help or church or involvement. And, sometimes they leave because in the back of their mind, it's just the workers have gone wrong and the way is still right. And so they keep it in their mind that they'll go back eventually when everything gets fixed. But it's not. And that's why I spent a whole chapter on this doctrine. I wanted people to realize, what are these people really teaching? And how does it compare to what God says? And I don't think that they really don't get the doctrine at meeting. They get a little bit here, a little bit there, and you keep going to meetings. And like in the book, I mentioned that the workers are like drug dealers, and then you go to meeting to get your fix. And you have to keep going to meetings to get another fix, and another fix, and another fix, and you never really get the healing that you need, the deliverance that you need, and you just keep going.
Sometimes it seems, and you mentioned this in your book, of the kind of William Irvine really early picked up on the Kinswick Convention format of, the quietness part of that.
Right.
And how that I think some people have confused that with the Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure the Kinswick Convention was something very valuable. It helped a lot of people coming out of the Church of England that, to finally discover that there is a spiritualness to Christianity and to their lives, and it wasn't just all ritual or, just going to Church of England service. And I mean, even as a Methodist, I was raised a Methodist, and, a regular Methodist service has a lot of recitative in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I visited my daughter back in Indiana when she was in graduate school, and we went to the local Methodist church, and I just fell right into it, and I was ready to say the words and do it all. And I mean, it was a comforting thing, and I could see 2x2s would probably feel that way too, get back to meeting and have that same sense of
something that's familiar.
It's something that's familiar and comforting in a way.
And it feels, the familiar can feel spiritual.
Right.
And confuse that with.
But I could relate to it then, just feeling that. But I mean, it's a totally different experience being a Methodist than being a 2x2. But, So, and my dad was a very strong Christian. I mean, he just, like I said, people couldn't pronounce his name, and he'd say, "Well, just call me Reverend Clothesline," And I mean, he was just easygoing. He always had humorous stories that he would tell that would spiritually incline, but would help you understand God's spirit. Like he told the story of this gal who was in an upper balcony, and she fell over, and her skirt was blown up. and so the pastor said, "Everyone, shut your eyes, and give her some privacy." And one guy said, "Well, I think I'll just cover one eye." So and people would laugh, but he was just that fun kind of person, and he would really bring it around to some kind of Christian teaching. So
do you think, in all of your research looking at the church, people finding Christ in the 2x2s, what do you think of that?
I don't know.
What do you think of that?
I don't know how anyone could find Jesus Christ in 2x2s. I mean, unless they were really reading their Bible diligently and they came to a realization through their reading, which has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some quotes in my book about that, people that have done that. That's the only way. And they had to realize that they could find Jesus through the Word, and they didn't have to find it through the worker, because they're not going to find it through the workers. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, they hardly even. My sister-in-law's wedding, Jesus was never mentioned once at her wedding, and I thought that was very weird.
Yeah, from a Christian perspective.
Oh
yeah.
Man, yeah, that troubled me a lot, and.
So where do you think the church is headed now that, in the last 3 years since Dean's exposure and kind of the real, Cherie's book came out and then Dean's exposure happened, and a lot of attention has now been exposed on the history of it and doctrine, and there's still a lot of people that are in the church that are still keeping their heads down because of all the teaching and indoctrination. But where do you think the church is headed? You've probably got some of the longest experience here in observing the church.
Well, I think that things will change in some ways. Like younger women are getting more so they can wear their hair down. I noticed at convention there were things that shocked me. I get shocked when I don't see things that are 2x2, and like I saw at a worker or a funeral of one of the professing people, and the sister worker was in sandals. And I thought, she's wearing sandals. Oh, my goodness! I get that kind of feeling. And I think, and the guys in their shirts and their beards, and the girls with their hair down, and and then the fancy bun type things that they're doing now. And I thought, I look at it. Oh my goodness! I have this sense of what's happening and what's going on, and it troubles me. Like it would trouble other 2x2s. So it's interesting.
Little lipstick and painted nails.
Oh,
there,
my
little
goodness.
trimming on the hair.
Oh my goodness, And
what next? Pants?
Oh, and it just. I was shocked. So, but that's how much it influenced me. How much I knew what they're really thinking and what their original teaching was, and then to see this happening, it just was troublesome for me. So interesting. But I think that things are changing, and even the workers themselves said, they were saying, well, if we can't keep going this way, we're going to die out. John Hardy said that, and Cooney or Jack Carroll would say that, and they all were aware that it was just sort of hanging by a thread at some point.
And they were saying that back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, 80s, and some of your quotes are from the 90s. I looked at those quotes and went, were those from a year ago, or were they from 94?
They were fully aware that if they couldn't maintain the control and submission like they wanted, that it would fall apart. It really would. So who knows? maybe this whole thing with the sexual issues will do it. But, when I see things like Olympia Convention, formerly 2 conventions annually with 1,000 people attending, now you're 1 convention with 400 people. I mean, things are happening.
Yeah.
I don't know that everyone's going to get out. Some people will go back in. But it's dying. And the workers, their level of workers have gone back to 1926. I mean, that's
kind of shocking. Yeah, we actually say the numbers.
Yeah.
That's a huge change, and the number of young people joining is dropping, and that's they're much more exposed to the internet and the research that's out there. And
it concerns me though, because this whole thing with suicide. Because if people leave and they don't find something out there spiritually that can really benefit them, they don't find Jesus, that they think, oh, I'm going to go to hell anyway, so what the hell, And they kill themselves when they get bored enough with life. It's very tragic for me, and that's one reason I wrote the book too. I wanted these people to know what it was so that they could get out of it and say, did I believe that? Oh my goodness gracious.
Yes, I know.
I wanted them to really see what it was, and that's why it's called The Truth About the Truth. I'm saying the whole truth. I'm putting that last puzzle piece in so people can really see everything. I don't think there's anything about the 2x2s that I didn't touch on in the book.
You pretty much hit all the points, and you really dig into the doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
Differently than, that's why I think Cherie's book, Preserving the Truth, and your book are really companion-type books, because Cherie's ability to dig into the minutia of research on how things got there, and I mean, she's just documented the living daylights out of it and cross-referenced it, where your book touches more on some of the doctrinal issues,
right,
and how they evolved and kind of what the workers said. Both of your books cover similar points in some cases, but there's a different viewpoint because you come from a completely different growing up,
right,
and running across it. And then you were one of the early ones to really dig into the history.
Oh,
you would be right in there with Doug Parker and some of the others.
And so I know Cherie got a lot of the information that I had gotten in the British Isles. I sent to her, and when she was writing her book, she would say, "What do you know about Australia?" So I would send her a whole bunch of stuff about Australia, and so I was trying to help. And so, we sort of worked together on that.
Yeah,
but
she's mentioned that.
She really focuses a lot on the history, though. And I didn't do a very big history chapters, but I get it from my perspective, because I was there. I talked to Irvine's nieces. I talked to the people at Faith Mission. I went to the Ireland and the newspaper office there. So, I had my own, I wanted to do my own thing. I purposely didn't read her book.
Okay.
I purposely didn't.
You did not read her book?
No, not yet. I've got it right over there.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't, because I didn't read anyone else's books because they were all subjective. This is my story. This is my experience. This is what I knew.
Well, you didn't have to read her book because...
I wanted my book to be totally from what I saw.
That's amazing. Cause
it's the only book ever written by someone who never was in the group.
Yeah. Now that kind of blows my mind, because there is a lot of information that you both come to then independently.
Oh, yeah.
That cross-correlates.
Yeah.
And a lot of conclusions that are similar but different. I mean, you word things differently. You're different people, but you're both seeing some of the same things, it seems like. There's a lot of seeing the psychology of how the group works. And I don't think they sat down originally and went, oh, this works. I think they kind of went out, and in that preaching of faith lines, those early boys developed a real skill for reading a room and this developed a systems of what works, and they probably passed that down.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, even the younger workers. I went to a special meeting in Casa Grande when I was visiting relatives down in Arizona, and I would skip going to church with them and then go to Casa Grande to go to the special meeting. And I remember there was a sister worker that preached on the stop signs of life, and I thought that was the most ridiculous sermon I've ever heard my whole life. The stop signs of life. You've got to yield. You've got to stop. You've got to go. Anyway, so but it's always been interesting to me, you know, just.
So did you have some particular notes there?
Oh, I took notes.
Well, you've got some notes in your
Oh,
hand.
yeah. Well, I wanted to make sure I covered everything here. Yeah, I went through everything in my book. I don't think there's a topic that's missed in the book. You know, all the meetings I went to, all the mores, the standards, the hair. The hair is a big thing, you know.
Marriage and divorce?
Oh, marriage and divorce, yeah. And, I mean, there was a Christian pastor, and he and his wife, she had come from a professing family, and then she became a Christian, and they went to Bible college together, and then he went to his church, and then the parents came, and the workers came and got the wife back involved in the group, and they ended up being divorced. So, you know, there's that story in there. And so, you know, a lot of, and then the whole sexual issue thing, oh my goodness, I could write a whole book on that. My goodness, I got files over there and files and boxes of things. I mean, you can't cover everything. I mean, it's just there, but, you know, I had to be selective and careful and, you know, and then everyone was wondering, well, are they going to sue you? You know, well, the workers, they don't sue because they don't want the publicity.
Wouldn't it be fun to have one of those under oath?
Oh,
Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
They want the exposure, you know, so they're not going to sue. And
I don't think they want the exposure now.
and then all the material I have is other people have it in their notes and their pictures and everything too. So it's not unusual, you know, or it's in the printed papers that were sent out to everybody. And so it's not like it's very secretive material. You know, so I wasn't too worried about anything in the book in that regard anyway. But I'm looking here, I'm trying to see a lot of personal experiences, you know, with my own professing relatives. I remember they would spank their little newborn baby when they visited the farm and visit the grandparents and everything. And they'd be spanking the baby because it was fussing for a diaper change. That was shocking to me that they would spank a baby for fussing during a diaper change. Just ridiculous. But they had to keep that baby quiet.
Spirit of the meeting.
Oh, my.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
And, you know, that really bothered me. And then, let me see if I've got anything I haven't discussed. I talked about the child custody. I talked about the deprogramming. I've talked about helping a lot of people get out the forward press, so you know about that. But, you know, I wanted to cover everything. And I think I did.
You've covered a lot. Oh, you have covered a ton of ground in that book. It's just amazing. And in reading through the book, the other part of it is understanding how long this research has been.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's parts of that book that feel very, very current. You know, and then you realize you wrote that probably 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and then after what I did was, I had it all on floppy disks as I was working on it. Of course, I couldn't find anything that could read floppy disks nowadays. Fortunately, I had everything printed out, and so I reprinted everything and sent a full set to Christy and a full set to Kathy, and I said, take a look at this. Let me know what you think. Am I out of my mind, or is this real? And so they sent back, and they loved it. They said, you've got to do this.
So even prior to those floppy disks, though, you said you were organizing it?
Yeah. I had a blue ring binder, and I'd cut things out that people sent me and photocopy it and pasted in, and different.
And so then at some point you went from the blue ring binders to putting it on modern technology of floppy disks.
Right, right. And, started to write. And like I said, I look at the book now and I go, did I write that? I'm amazed that I could actually write that. and so.
So how many years do you think you were involved in writing that?
Oh, well, I know I was before the 1980s because I had contact with the gentleman who at Westmont College in California, and he was writing a book called Abuse and the Truth, and he mentions Thrashing Floor Ministries and the fact that the 2x2s were abusive, one of the abusive.
Did that book
churches.
ever get published?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It did. And so my book, it's referenced in there. And then I was sending material to Cult Ministries, and they have a magazine that comes out, and they did a little thing on the 2x2. So I was getting it out there, a little bit, but I still look at it. I keep every day. You can see all my little tags.
Yeah, you've got a book with a whole bunch of little red and yellow tags sticking out of it.
And I keep thinking, oh my goodness, did I write this? I'm just amazed. And I keep looking at like this is someone else's book, But I can only think that, and like Kathy would say, she said it's a God thing, God wrote that, and because I was good in school. I made A's in school.
Okay.
So I was good with grammar and all that too. But to be a writer, I was just amazed. And the whole format of using the worker quotes and their terminology and the picture on the cover like a puzzle, all of that just came to me like it was God saying, that's what I want you to do. I want you to do it this way so that people can really see. And so that's...
And there's a book.
There it is, yeah. And like I said, I'm just absolutely amazed.
2026.
Oh, yeah. And then I'm getting, they should be coming sometime this next week, maybe. I'm getting 50 copies myself. And I'm sending a whole bunch to Kathy and Christy. They want their copies. I'm sending them, And then I'm going to send some to my professing relatives, giving some to all family members. And I'm going to take some to the local Annie's bookstore.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And because they're not connected to like Barnes and Noble, and
right.
It's sort of a private bookstore. So I'm doing a lot of crazy things still. And but I'll have extra books, and everyone can read it. And my grandsons, I'll give a copy to them at some point. So
Is it a print-on-demand type book? The way they set it up?
I don't know. They got it pretty quick. The publisher called me on a Friday and said they're going to be available on Amazon, starting today. And my daughter had Amazon Prime, so it said order me one right now. And I got it. And I got it on Sunday. So I got the first book, I think, probably.
Oh, good.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm going, did I write this? It's amazing. But I keep reading through it. Oh yes, I remember that story, and so interesting. So
that's fascinating. Do you have questions, Crystal?
I just think that the whole thing is fascinating, and I love the fact that you didn't ever profess, because honestly, I would like to just say to anybody watching this that when you do start to really get out in the world, the fascinating thing to me is, you already mentioned it, Brice, two separate people coming to the same conclusions. Literally, everybody on the outside, when they start looking at the data and the information, come to the same conclusion. And it's not a huge leap to get there. The average person that knows Christianity, understands the Bible, understands the fruits of the Spirit, so many things, they literally just respond with, are you seriously kidding me? Like, that just doesn't make any sense at all. And it's very concerning to a lot of people. So I think that piece of it is interesting. I also think that the whole my own theory is wherever there's sexual repression, there tends to be sexual deviance. And you mentioned the bestiality and a lot of the other things. And I don't know if that was built into it. I don't know what the intention was behind all of that, but it certainly seems like that's a factor in a lot of the
Well, I
minds.
know that later there was another worker that not only practiced bestiality, but he was still involved with women and girls too. So
Wow.
that was really gross beyond belief.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's, last week I met with a lot of different people too, and it's just the stories that are starting to come out. And I think that so much fear from the inside has kept people quiet for so long. And people are
mhm.
now starting to really feel like they can speak the truth. And that is even new. I mean, that's growing. That courage is growing every day, a little bit at a time. And so I think your book is really going to help move the needle on people saying, well, I'm not saying anything that somebody else doesn't already know, and that's the truth. So, it gives your courage gives courage to other people. So I want to thank you for that. And I really thank you for dedicating so many years and so much time to this because it's life changing. And in a lot of ways, what I've heard from a lot of people is it's very affirming. Um, to so many who have changed their whole lives over the last 3 years, and it's a lot of people, and yet there's that lingering fear. What if they're right? What if I'm having false peace? What if all the what ifs? And I feel like that this book is very, very affirming to the truth about the truth.
Right.
So thank you for
Well,
that.
and my biggest concern is I was looking through a lot of the quotes on your website, and so many people that just sort of given up on spirituality. They don't want to have anything to do with the church. They can't really handle anything. And I just feel so sad for them. And I want them to come to know Jesus and to realize that he died for them. He died for them. And it was a horrible death. If they've ever seen The Passion of the Christ movie, they should watch that because, I mean, even the actor, he suffered the same way Jesus suffered. And I just want them to realize he went through so much for us and that he died, and not just for our sins, but I'm sure the ignorance that we had when we get involved in cults and things like this. He died for that too. And that he can completely take all that away in an instant when you accept him as Lord and Savior. And that's what my whole book is about. I want people to see that, and that they don't have to stay in this limbo of not trusting anything ever again.
Well, you've said it very well. There are a lot of people in that position. It was so fun to see so many people celebrating Easter this year. And,
Oh, yeah.
for the first time, for many, many, many people, it was the first time of truly understanding Holy Week, understanding how Christ died, what happened exactly, and everything behind it, which is just not something that we did. And so I feel I appreciated your question about what the future is because, even after this last week being with so many different people, I have such renewed hope. And it's not just the spirit of Easter. It's really that people are awakening up. People are starting to learn about Christ. They are starting to invite him into their life in a way that I don't know. Inside the church is so ritualistic, and we just did what we did. We read the Bible for Sunday morning testimony, not really for our own edification or feeding of our spirit and soul. I can't say that for everybody, but the majority of people that I talked to, that's kind of what we did. And we were very much conditioned with the hum of the routine and the things that we did and how we did them and who we did them with. And so even though so many feel like they've lost everything in so many other ways, they're waking up to the spirituality and that the side of it that is, I feel, broken open and very tender. And
Well, I'm so very proud that my husband and I, when we were first married in 1970, we lived in Phoenix, and Phoenix was a hotbed of spirituality. We had so many famous great Christian leaders, Nora Lamb of China Cry, Corrie ten Boom, The Hiding Place, Merle Carruthers of Prison to Praise, and Mel Tari from the Indonesian ministry, where people were literally raised from the dead. I mean, it was just an opportunity to hear these people. And Brother Andrew, God's smuggler that smuggled Bibles into Russia. I mean, it was just an amazing experience that we had. And we had a group called Interchurch Renewal, which was all kinds of church people, denominations and whatever. And we would come and hear people speak. We heard David Duplessis, who they called Mr. Pentecostal. He was a Catholic, but he spoke so beautifully about Christ. Right. And we had the opportunity to sit under these people and to experience them and to learn and grow spiritually through them. And it was the most exciting thing in our lives, I think. And my whole family's that way. My daughter, my son, they're very, very into this. And even my grandsons. My daughter was saying my grandson, who's 14, but Logan, who walked through here, he's received the Holy Spirit in his life. So, I'm so proud of that. Yeah. And it's exciting to watch. And when people say, I don't want to have anything to do with the church anymore, I don't want to have anything, it just wrecks me, because there's so much out there that they could enjoy. So much. And I was telling Bruce, I was telling Brice that I gave him a copy of a book, and he'll give it to you. It's called Prison to Praise by Merlin Carruthers. And it's his story of how he was basically a criminal in the military, and yet God raised him up and delivered him. And my husband and I love that book so much that in memory of my husband, who died from ALS several years ago, I buy those little books every month. And my son and I put a $1 bill in every book, and when we pass someone on the street with their little sign, where I need food or God bless or whatever, we hand it to them. And so that's our little ministry right now. And my son has books on his side, and I have books on my side of the car, and wherever the person is, we hand these out. Mm-hmm. And we're just praying that God will bless these people. And I think this book would really be a blessing to a lot of people that have left the 2x2s as well, because they could see God really changing someone's life dramatically.
Yeah, I think that in time, that's how it will go. There is definitely a window of deconstruction and just so many layers for so many people. And I do believe that spirituality piece, the pendulum, it did for me. I went way over here and said, I don't need that. I'm smart, intelligent, and educated. I got this. And then, life happens, and then I ended up over here, so I really do see people at every stage of this process, which is a very painful experience for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of this book. I wanted to cover everything. I don't think, and Brice would agree, I don't think there's anything that's a 2x2ism that I didn't touch on in the book. And I'm hoping that they'll see that, they'll recognize that, and they'll say, I need more. Now that I fully understand what this was, I fully understand it now, and I can find deliverance. So that's my hope.
Well, I'll say amen to that. Thank you, Brice, for being there. Thank you for everything that you've done to help get this story out. And I know that you will be a huge part of all of us moving forward. And, I think the first time I interviewed you, I said, when we understand the history, it's a lot easier to move forward. And, when you have a solid foundation of how you got to where you are, then it's easier to move forward from that. So, I just feel like that's a very, very important piece of the puzzle. So I want to thank both of you for doing that. So,
the opportunity to share, because I have such a burden for every single person that's in this group and has left the group. That's the whole point. Someone said, well, what are your profits on your book? I don't care. I don't care. I want to get the book out to people. I don't care if it's like 50 cents a book. I don't care.
How many boxes do you have over there?
Oh,
How many did you say you had in your storage?
I have over 36 in my storage. I've got a couple more here. There's one under there. There's a bunch of stuff on my desk.
And these boxes, by the way, have wood grain type print on the outside of them. So if that gives you an age range of when you could get file boxes that have wood grain print kind of on them. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So your profits at 50 cents a book, if that's what it is not even going to cover your storage unit for a month.
I bet she never covers the storage.
I don't care. You know,
I know you don't.
Cares.
I love you for that.
He's become addicted to looking at the information 3 times a day to see how many books have sold.
Yes.
And like we sold 10 yesterday. He lets me know. But I just I just want them out there. I want people to read this. I want them to get something out of it. I mean, I could care about the money.
You're not making much money with your pay.
I hear you. Well, that's why we do what we do.
It's going to be on Kindle and ebook soon.
Oh,
they have sort of a book bleeding issue, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's sort of where the margins are and all of that. And so they had to get that adjusted, and I haven't heard from my publisher yet. They've got that totally fixed. But Kindle and ebook will be coming out. I've also got Instagram spec, which gets me over to your foreign countries. And I've already sold some in the United Kingdom. I'm amazed by that. And I had contact with someone in Sweden. And so, it's just, and then, of course, Linda Tame is in New Zealand. So there's a lot of contacts around the world. I'm getting excited about that.
Yeah.
And because it's such a worldwide group, and I included in the book, I had a 2017, 2018 convention list, and I included that in the book. And so that people could see that there's a lot of conventions. It's everywhere in the world. They used to even have one in, my brain is dying right now.
Were you thinking Vietnam or?
No, it wasn't Vietnam. It was the Asian, not Qatar, but the fancy rich one.
Dubai?
Dubai. Yeah, that's it. I couldn't remember that for some reason. Yeah, they even had a convention in Dubai, if you can figure that one out, years ago, like 2015 or something. So anyway,
must have been pretty special to fly to that one.
Well, they probably only had maybe 3 or 4 people at the convention too, and probably a one-day meeting. But they had a convention listed, and they had them all over the world. And I thought, oh my goodness, we've got to reach these people.
Yeah,
we really do.
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on it. All right.
You've got to finish looking through those other boxes.
Yeah, I'll take a look through them.
I'm going to let you guys do that. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Brice? I always give last word, so I'm going to give that to her, but I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, it's just been a real pleasure to meet her in person after reading the book. I did finally finish it last night. It's 500 and some pages. It's not a quick read, so it takes a while to work through it, and I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the quotes in there, but there are some new ones that are you'll be seeing some of those reposted here and there at appropriate times.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. I gave him a list of, I found an old list. It was going through these boxes after I hadn't been through some of these boxes that I brought for him to look at in years. So I found a Pullman list of workers and meetings, and he was fascinated by that, so he could.
So interesting.
Little history locally.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I did the same thing for Spokane, because my son said, well, how many meetings do they have in Spokane? Well, I didn't know. So I found an old list. They used to have 6 meetings. I doubt they have that many now, according to Christy. They'd be lucky to have 2, maybe. But, so it was just interesting to see, though. you know.
Yep. Well, Mary Ann, I'm going to give you last word for this interview today. You're going to close us out, and whatever wisdom you would like to leave us with, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, I like I said, I'm not in it to make money. I'm in it to get people to really see what this group is all about, and to help. And the main goal was to help my sister-in-law to come to know Jesus Christ, because she had rejected him. She had joined this group, and it's been a burden all my life. And I think the book tells that. So if you read the prelude and the introduction, you'll see that that's where it's coming from. And then Christy was saying, not only did she say that this was an explosive book, she said it's like an A-bomb. So I'm hoping that it blows up a lot of things.
Well, there's lots to be blown up. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your visit. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today, but I will definitely see you again someday. I do get to Spokane fairly often, just not when the ferry doesn't run. So